I'm Britton Brown, and on this week's episode of U.S. Bike Racing News, I'll be talking about brain injuries. I'll recap the Amgen Tour of California. You'll be getting all 7 stages in under 5 minutes. And I'll let you see how my blue chip rider picks did last week in going into this week's racing. This is U.S. Bike Racing News. Welcome back to U.S. Bike Racing News. As promised, let's take a look at the 7 stages of the Amgen Tour of California. Stage 1 of the Amgen Tour of California was all about the sprinters, and they did not disappoint with the world's best Marcel Kittel taking the stage in the yellow jersey. However, Stage 2 saw the end of Kittel's reign in the yellow, with the climbers essentially coming out to play. One sad note, Skujins, who appeared to perhaps be the strongest rider in the day's break, went down hard, which ended his Amgen race and bid for the overall. As I just mentioned, a significant break formed with all the Amgen top riders, making it except Andrew Talansky, which put all the workload on the chasing group to rest on the shoulders of Cannondale-Drapac. I do want to give a quick shout out to Ben King of Cannondale-Drapac, since he basically kept Talansky's tour hopes alive, delivering an epic ride and pulling for most of the chase. The winning break consisted of Micah, Bennett, Morton, Skujins, and Bosworth putting a beat down on the remaining chase group. I must say it was one of the best races I've seen in a while. Most races seem to fall into a checkmate sort of race when you have the GC favorites all together, putting in significant time on their rivals, but not this race. It seemed like every single rider in the break took his turn, throat punching his opponents until the final kilometer. In the end, it came down to Micah and Bennett sprinting for the win, and American rider Ian Bosworth finishing third to round out the podium. Stage 3 of the Amgen Tour of California was a perfect day to chill out, recover, and let the sprinters have their day in the sun. Everybody seemed to get the memo except old Ben Wolf, who decided to take a shot as the lone wolf. No pun intended, of course, by seeing if he couldn't disrupt the sprinter's day by grabbing some glory for himself. However, when it's time to wind things up, the sprint trains make it their profession to suck the wind out of those solo artist sails, and with Trek Segafredo on the front punching it for their main man John Degenkolb, old Ben didn't stand a chance. The boys were flying coming into the finishing straights, hitting speeds over 45 miles an hour. Trek Segafredo started their train a little bit too early, and with the speeds amped up where they were, it looked like most sprinters were having a heck of a time moving into position, with the exception of Peter Sagan, who seemed to find the perfect position coming into what is probably the perfect finish for a rider like himself, an uphill drag race for the line. The win basically solidified Sagan's green jersey, and there was little change in the overall GC. Stage 4 was supposed to be another day for the sprinters, but a 5-rider break got up the road early. That included Gavin Mannion of UHC, Evan Huffman, and Rob Britton of Raleigh, who had other intentions. And with 10K to go, I don't think anyone actually thought they were going to be able to pull it off. Heck, Yenzi sounded like a two-headed coin, going all in one moment and then cashing in his chips for a bunch sprint the next. Totally cracked me up. Coming into the final K, you could actually see the peloton bearing down on the break, but they ended up mistiming the catch, allowing the breakaway to take it all the way to the line, which resulted in our first Continental team and American rider to snag a stage victory of the Amgen Tour of California. Stage 5 started out with Rob Britton of Raleigh having another go at a stage victory by attacking early and often. And with all the other GC contenders chomping at the bit to grab some time and some glory, you knew it was going to be a good one from the start. Going into the stage, you had to have had the thought that Talansky was going to have to come out and play his hand, since giving up significant time on the second stage if he's going to get back into the GC hunt. After reeling Rob Britton back in, Talansky made his move, hitting the group with several attacks, but Bennett and Micah and Bosworth were all able to claw their way back. This led to a sprint finish coming into the final corner, where we saw a very cheeky move by Talansky when he was able to push Micah wide, checkmating him for the stage victory. Stage 6 was the Big Bear TT overlooking Big Bear Lake. With Jonathan Dibbins sitting in the hot seat early on, Brent Bookwalter gave it his best shot at taking the lead, but unfortunately fell just short of Dibbins. In the meantime, I think everybody had to be asking themselves if Huffman could recover enough to take a shot at the TT victory, and whether or not Bennett could actually grab yellow from Micah. Next up was Talansky, and Talansky looked to be on good form. As each checkpoint was passed, Talansky was definitely in the hunt, but in the end he had to settle for third on the day. Then came Lachlan Morton. Poor Lachlan, bad luck socked him right in the kisser. Lachlan actually had 2 mechanicals and at one point had to change his bike. This not only cost Lachlan the Best Young Rider jersey for the day, but he gave up valuable time in GC as well. Then George Bennett came through with an impressive time that was sure to put Mike on the ropes when it came to keeping the yellow jersey. Unfortunately, Rafael Micah was unable to match Bennett's time, which meant the yellow jersey was going to change hands for a third time going into the last stage. Stage 7 once again saw Rob Britton and Evan Huffman of Rally go into beast mode, attacking early and sticking the winning break. The peloton had definitely taken notice, and with Lachlan Morton in the break, it wasn't going to be an easy day or scenario for the break to make it to the line again. However, in cycling, when shit goes your way, you gotta maximize it. And maximize it they did. You could sense the peloton was freaking out. Rally at one point had a total of 3 riders in the break, so most of the responsibility was going to come down on them. But the Rally boys were nuking it, and the peloton was struggling to bring any significant chunks of time back. And then, with 500 meters to go, Huffman hit the gas and carried it home for his second stage victory of the Amgen Tour of California. Well, this last week saw a very scary accident take place when Scoogens of Cannondale Drapac hit the deck. As a firefighter paramedic, I see a lot of head injuries. Today I want to show you a demonstration of what happens to your skull when you hit your head without a helmet and then with a helmet. And then I want to share some quick tips on how to identify a person that has possibly experienced a traumatic brain injury. Let's take a look at the demonstration. Okay, today's demonstration is to simulate what happens to you if you were riding your bicycle without a helmet and fell and landed and hit your head. Now, the average human head weighs approximately 11 pounds. This melon weighs about 50% of that, right at about 5.5 pounds. But what's unique about it is that in science they've proven that a melon is about as hard as your melon. So here's what I want to show you. I'm going to drop this melon at shoulder height, and we're going to see what happens to your head when you hit the ground. So here we go. Bam. Split skull, right? Split melon. Now I want to show you in this situation what happens when you have a helmet. Now, just so you know, this helmet is a Bell helmet. I'm going to throw it away afterwards because you should never have a helmet and wear a helmet that you've actually crashed with. So here we go. Same thing, same scenario. Bam. Nothing wrong. Now I probably softened it a little bit, and I can actually feel right here a little bit of concave to the melon. But here's my point. There's lots that we look at when a rider goes down, or anybody for that nature that gets hurt. Without a helmet, you highly put yourself in a position where you're going to have a traumatic brain injury. So I hope you got something out of this. The bottom line is this. You highly increase the chances for a serious brain injury. We call it a traumatic brain injury. With a helmet, you seriously reduce the risk of a TBI. So I hope you got something out of it. Share it with your friends. Wear a helmet next time you ride your bike. And as for that helmet, we're done. So as you just seen, a solid hit to the skull causes significant damage, even if you're wearing a helmet. So what do you do if you see somebody hit their head? First, call 911. Next, make sure they're breathing. Note how their respirations sound and what they actually look like. Next, look at their pupils. Are they equal or are they dilated? Either one, both, doesn't matter. Just make a note of it. Check and see if there's fluid coming from their ears. What it'll look like is kind of a clearish pink fluid that's dripping from their ears, don't wipe it up, don't touch it, just make a note of it. And lastly, if they're able to speak, start asking questions. What's your name? What happened? What year is it? Who is the president? How many quarters in a dollar? They should be able to answer every single one of those questions pretty clearly, even if they're a little foggy in the very beginning. And lastly, what are the obvious signs of a traumatic brain injury? Well, one, they don't remember what happened. Two, you ask them what happened, they tell you what happened, and then just a few minutes later, they start asking you, hey, what happened? It's amnesia. Next, do they have fluid coming from their ears? That is a really bad sign. Next, a blown pupil, one or both, is a very bad sign. And lastly, and probably the most obvious, are they breathing? And if they are, is it strange breathing patterns? Those are the key issues you need to know about when it comes to what we call a TBI. So in Scoojan's case, we saw a very lucky rider. Lucky because his accident could have been a hell of a lot worse. Nonetheless, we saw a rider who had a serious head injury allowed to get back on his bike and ride. It's my opinion, for what that matters, that this could have easily been avoided with a little knowledge about what to look for. Think about it. If that would have been the case, the individual that helped Scoojan's back on his bike could have done a quick assessment, declared Scoojan's unfit to race his bike, and waited for a doctor rather than letting him ride on. Anyway, sure hope that helps somebody out in the future. Well, this leads us to a part of the segment called Buy, Sell, or Hold. Last week I highlighted some of my blue chip riders with the idea of holding a portfolio of just, say, 10 riders at a time. The result was Evan Huffman was a solid double down buy and turned out to be a golden performer with 2 wins at the Amgen. I was also a buyer of Gavin Mannion with UHC, who had a solid performance at the Amgen, and Danny Summerhill, who was killing it at the Tour of Japan. However, I lost out when I doubled down on Eric Young coming into the Amgen. He dropped out, and I sold Sepp Kuss a week earlier than I probably should have, and he ended up having a dynamite race, grabbed a top 10 in stage 5, killed it the whole entire time. Super impressed with him. However, it's the way it is sometimes. You can't win them all. This week I'm still long Robin Carpenter with the idea we're coming into Winston-Salem. TJ Eisenhart, not sure he's actually going, but coming off of a win at Redlands, guy I want to own. Eric Marcotte and Travis McCabe heading into, as I said, the Winston-Salem Classic. I was also keeping, I'm also going to keep Evan Huffman, of course, and I'm going to buy more of him. It seems like you can't lose with him. I'm also going to add Ryan Roth this week with UHC for a possible repeat of the 2016 Winston-Salem race. So with that said, keep the rubber side down. Make sure you share the videos, subscribe to the YouTube channels, and let's just go grow the sport together. Thanks for watching. I'm Britton Brown.